In a few moments, you will have an experience which will seem completely real. It will be the result of your subconscious fears transformed to your conscious awareness. You have 5 seconds to terminate this tape. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's going on, everybody? Happy Wednesday. Happy Wednesday. Thank you again for joining me for another BG-Cast Wednesday live podcast. Real quick, I got a couple things I just want to announce real fast. I saw I broke 300 subscribers over on YouTube. So again, thank you so much for everybody for coming on board with the BG-Cast family, joining me on this very dangerous, irresistible pastime we call the human experience. I'm grateful for every one of you who decided to stop in and have a listen or have a watch. And thanks to the new followers over on Rumble too, guys. I'm actually really happy to have you. And yeah, man, you know, it's been a heavy day for a lot of people, has it not? It seems to have been a purging day. I've kind of dealt with it myself a little bit, you know. Everything is kind of starting to ramp up. You know, we have a lot of intense energies coming in. And it's going to affect us all very differently, you know. But the number one thing I could say for this right now, guys, is, you know, always give yourself grace, man. Understand, you know, that you're a human being. You're allowed to feel. You're allowed to experience. You know, I know we're all on our spiritual evolution at this point in time, and that is a very important thing in our lives. But we can't negate our humanity during the process. You know, sometimes when we're in days like this and we have moments like this, we need a little bit of that extra self-care. You know, we need to maybe take one step at a time instead of pushing ourselves extremely hard. You know, and today was most certainly a one step at a time day for me, you know, and I actually kind of view my evolution like I view working out. I was talking with my guest about this earlier. You know, when you've been in the gym for a while, or, you know, you've been on your evolution for a while, and you're going to have good days and you're going to have bad days. And, you know, on the good days where you feel great and, you know, you're feeling awesome and you're feeling that fire. Yes, go ahead and push yourself a little bit, you know, go ahead and kind of push yourself an extra few steps because you're feeling good. But then you have those days where you don't feel so great. You know, you might have not slept very well. You might just be in a bad mood. You know, you might have some stuff surfacing, coming up from within. And those are the days that you want to take it a step at a time, you know, and there's no harm, no foul in that at all. You know, I know a lot of us are go-getters in this, and we want to push ourselves to like the utmost absolute limit that we can in our progress. And that's good to have that mentality. Don't get me wrong. But one of the biggest lessons that I'm learning right now is that we need to open ourselves and be receptive to potentially simpler ways of looking to what we're trying to achieve here. And sometimes that means, you know, a opportunity or an outcome that you're looking to present, looking to find, looking to acquire. Could be right under your nose. You never know. So we just always have to stay open, you know, and we have to give ourselves that grace. But nonetheless, let's get to the show. This is going to be an awesome one. A lot of you already know my guest. She is a friend of mine, and we have been doing our damnedest to try and bring true Christ back into this existence. And of course, you know, we started the Church of True Christ, and, you know, we've been talking about these topics a lot lately. But what I kind of want to do with this show is I kind of want to give an outline to why we feel the way we do, and, you know, how this way of looking at things could potentially be a better way. And nonetheless, let me introduce my guest. You guys know her as Transcending Ascension, the Spirit Mom herself, Dyanna Marie. What is going on?
Hi, happy to be here again. It's I love our conversations, and I think everyone else does too. We like birth things.
Absolutely, absolutely. Our dynamic's really awesome, you know, and I think because, you know, we're very much on the same wavelength in how we see these things. And it's kind of funny. I forgot to tell you before the show, I was looking at my banners, and I still have some of my banners from my pre-Nicene rabbit hole episode 3, and I was kind of like playing with them a little bit before you came on. But yeah, no, we can even bring these up tonight too. But nonetheless, I have a meme I want to share with everybody real quick before we start to dive into our topic. And I think this meme kind of really hits the point home. You know, it really showcases that there was a misinterpreted message that was being delivered to us from this embodiment of Christ known as Yeshua or Jesus. But nonetheless, let's bring up the meme. I actually have to give Don from After Dark Show, March 4th Productions, a lot of credit because he sent this to me. But I think this is going to drive the point home of this entire episode, because this is exactly what I think, and I know Dyanna thinks as well. So we have Christ wasn't trying to start a religion. He was trying to awaken your frequency. And I think that is exactly what was going on, because when we talk about the energy of Christ, we talk about an awakening energy. We talk about a revealer, and the Gnostics revered him as a revealer. And, a lot of other different Christian sects did as well. So like, I think, over time, you guys know my opinion on the current batch of modern Christianity, and my opinion on the current versions of the Bible already. I've done 3 episodes on this. So this is why I'm really excited to break into this topic tonight. So let's hit it. We have Christianity and metaphysics and the synergy between the two. So Dyanna, why don't you dive into your scope of opinion on why Christianity and metaphysics work very well together? And I also have something we're going to show after we hear you talk about this that kind of showcases that Christianity and metaphysics work hand in hand. And we have some very hard evidence for this as well. So let's hear your thoughts on this. Of course, I know you and I have been kind of hitting this point home a little bit lately, but let's dive in deep. So let's hear why you feel Christianity and metaphysics work very well together and complement each other.
Yes. And I'm the perfect person to have someone explain things twice if you like to hear things in different ways, because of the open throat, which we give to human design. My open throat makes it so I never say the same thing in the same way twice. And that journey of Christianity and metaphysics is so my journey. It is what has been my thing, and not on purpose, by accident. Everyone who knows me raised atheist. So my subconscious is still largely atheist. So I always had that within me. And Christ came and got me back in the early days of going to church because of my grandma. And I was the only one as the oldest sibling that did that. My younger, so it was over before I even remember it. It was over before I was even 2. And a cute story showing that I was in to talk at church from the get-go. And that's my parents and my grandma and everyone's there. It's the last time they brought me, because they say it's cute, but they stopped going. So they're clearly maybe embarrassed. But they were talking about the burning bush in Moses. And I pipe up this cute, because I could talk really early. And I was like, why didn't they call a fire truck? And everyone laughed. It's horrible. And they talk about being cute, but they never went back because I was too chatty. That's what they said, but they were atheists. They only went for my grandma because she was really into Jesus. But she didn't overly talk about it a lot. I just knew she was, and that was like kind of Grandma Beach. And so fast forward to grade 5, they gave me a Bible, only the New Testament, which is that's more or less good. And then in my adulthood, and I had this dark experience, which I've talked about a lot, where I felt Jesus come to me, and I felt my Grandma Beach come to me, like both of them, because she had freshly just passed. And I was new into my pagan witchcraft growing self, but I listened to Jesus and Grandma, and I got out of there, and I started healing. It wasn't perfect. And I didn't even dive right into Jesus. I continued being a pagan and learning about chakras, and it all grew from there. But Jesus never left me. And it's not like I was like, go away, Jesus, but I didn't, because of the Christian church and because of being raised atheist and because of just being intelligent, I knew everything in the church was dumb. Like a lot of it's dumb. Besides the wanting the community, that's the one thing that they have, because that energy of people brought together is something. And they hold that hostage over your head to get
You froze up, Dyanna. But no, no. I totally understand what you're saying. It's that towing the line that we spoke about. You know, it's they do. Go ahead, continue. You're back.
I don't know when I cut out.
You were
But
talking about the community, how they loop you in with the
yeah,
community.
I was getting off topic anyways. I try to think of the stills that happen as like God asking me to recenter, because my mouth can go and I can forget why I'm talking. So how metaphysics and Christianity go really well together is that Christ in it, exactly what Dawn said. And Dawn, we're on the same wavelength. I love you. I know, sis, you could use it. I wanted to comment. It won't let me sign in. It's being difficult, but it's so true. And I was diving into similar stuff earlier today myself. I posted something about it on the Christ site and something similar on my own site. And it's just so true. And that's what I've always been teaching, like way back. And I always reference this workshop, and it's like, why you keep talking about it? Like, because I accidentally Christed. Like I taught this huge workshop on the heart brain connection and the God spark within, and it was just Christ. And like, and literally I wasn't a person that like wanted this to be a thing. It's just so overarchingly a thing, you know what I mean? Because so many people yeah. And so many people have this like born into them subconscious link to Christianity. And you can argue it's in your DNA, because Carl Jung does say, like, when it comes to studying your philosophies, you want to study what your DNA has. Like if you're going to jump into one, although I study all of them, but it's true, you have resonance even for occult knowledge and hermetic knowledge. That's actually Western. Kabbalah, that's Western, but so is Christianity, the Judeo-Christian thing. That's in our DNA for the large part. But if you're from like the East and like the Taoist or the Hindu religions, that's going to be your thing that you're naturally going to vibe with. So this isn't like, the Christ energy is so much bigger than Jesus, but the magic that's connected to it and the living embodiment of it within your heart spark, it is the heart spark. This can be said and said again and said again and said again, just like the all is mind. It's one of those things like where you can't get it into you enough. You want a million different perceptions on how this works, because it's such an overarching layer of our actual reality, the Christos. It's a fundamental factor in existence itself. So it is metaphysics to a large degree.
Absolutely. No, and I agree with everything you just said. And you know, we've talked about the towing the line, you know, that a lot of modern Christianity you know, has, you know, with the church. I mean, yes, they have the community, but in order for you to be a part of that community, you have to do everything they say and look at the interpretations the way that they do of the scripture. And if you deviate from that, or you start to ask certain questions, it's frowned upon and it's looked down upon. But nonetheless, let's get into this. So metaphysics, let's look at the definition of metaphysics. You know what I mean? Because this is really what's going to take the cake on this, because when we look at the definition of metaphysics, we can see a very clear picture that's painted to us right here. So let's take a look here. So boom, I'm going to pull this up, and I actually have some Bible verses as well. We're going to showcase this. So we have metaphysics, the branch of philosophy that deals with the first principles of things, including abstract concepts such as being, knowing, substance, cause, identity, time, and space. So the one thing that I fail to realize, because if we look at the Bible, even the modern Bible, like the King James Version or things like that, it addresses all of this. Does it not? It addresses every single thing in this definition here. And for a lot of people who still might be on the fence that, you know, this doesn't go hand in hand, let's bring up some Bible verses that showcase. So we have Bible verses for time and space I'm going to bring up. Now, we're not going to go through all of them, but I'm just showing everybody here that we have Bible verses that talk about time and space right here. We have Genesis 1:1. I mean, we have Job 26:7. We have John 1:1. We've got Genesis 1:1 to 31. Hebrews 11:3. Hebrews 6:1 to dash to through 20. Isaiah 42-5. I mean, the list goes on for these Bible verses when it comes to aspects such as time and space. And we also have a list of Bible verses for identity as well, because this is something that's even spoken about like to such a huge degree. Even in the modern text of the Bible, the King James Version as well. So it's like we have even more Bible verses that showcase this as well. And I mean, the list just goes on. I mean, so this is one of the things that I think really, and I know you would agree with me, Dyanna. I mean, look at the list of Bible verses when it comes to identity. We have Genesis 1:27, Corinthians 1 Peter 2-9, Galatians 2-20. I mean, the list is endless here. And then, on top of that also, so the other one I have is knowing. So I looked up even a list of Bible verses for knowing. Okay, so let's pull this up real fast as well. And this is where I think a lot of the discounting of metaphysics from modern Christians, it really stems from dogma. Okay, and we talked about dogma at our ministry on Sunday, but here we go. We have so much when it comes to knowing. I mean, we have 1 Kings 2-3. Now, there's actually a very interesting verse I want to read here. Let me pull it up here. For God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. So this is just I think this is just, Dyanna, this is driving the point home very hard, that Christianity and metaphysics work hand in hand, and we shouldn't discount this anymore, especially when it comes to Christ.
Yeah, 100%. Like I read the Bible. Like I read the whole thing because this calling wouldn't stop. I was like, all right, let's go. Start to finish, read the Bible. Obviously, I skimmed through the begot sections and things like that. But the whole Bible is filled with such truth. But then you try, and there's it says in the Bible that no book other than this should be worshipped. Meanwhile, that was written before the Bible was even finished. Okay. And then who decided what finished it? And then and then all the stuff about women, all the stuff about beating people, all the stuff about slaves. So it is filled with so much wrong information, which any proper channeler has actually brought new untruths. Like that's part of the process, but the Bible kind of crosses the line into like a charlatan territory, because it's not just one person, it's tons of people. And they're edited and cherry picked and manipulated. And it's a whole different time period. It's over 2,000 years ago, if history is to be believed to that degree. And that's just not okay. We're in a totally different space. So what we have come to realize, and why the Christian faith has failed, and why the Church of True Christ, led by a man and a woman, actually stands a chance of meaning something, because that was the missing piece all along, was that equality stream right there, because that is so vital for us to be one with God again, made in my image as gods, but split into two. Actual God is both combined. So that aspect right there is missing, but you do have tons of information in there. That's good. Tons of information, but then you sit in a church and they'll twist it, and you read it, but then right after that's a janky one, and you're like, okay. So like the whole time I was reading the Bible, I was like, witchcraft, cool, not true. Witchcraft, cool, not true. So like it was just going through all these different things. Like we're like, yes, I would recommend reading it. Yes, you will get good and deep information from it, like top notch, like emerald tablet level stuff. But unlike the emerald tablet, it's sprinkled with landmines. So you need to read it discerningly.
I would completely agree with you, and I mean, we're looking at the byproduct of a Bible too at this point in time that has undergone canonical revisions from at least 12 to 13 councils at this point in time, and we look at how modern Christianity came to be. We see that the Council of Nicaea swatted out any earlier Christian ideology or philosophy. We talked about Arianism on Sunday, but for those of you who don't know what Arianism is, and this is your first time tuning in, it is the belief that Christ is an energy and has existed since the beginning, since creation. Christ was not created down the road. Christ has always existed and has always manifested itself here. And I mean, you guys even saw the episode I did, and if you haven't, I'll link it into the bottom when we're done, where I compared creation stories. And we look at the creation story from the secret book of John, and we see that Christ had Adam and Eve eat from the tree, and this was his energy that appeared to Adam and Eve when they were in the false unity consciousness in the Garden of Eden with the demiurge, according to that version of Genesis. And, he was the one who liberated Adam and Eve from the false unity consciousness. So yes, I agree with you. Even the modern Bible has a lot of great stuff in it. Absolutely. And you're right. There are landmines that are sprinkled in there. And I mean, there have been also revisions that I feel, in my own sense, I guess you could say, kind of did disservice to the book. I mean, I remember they originally edited Elohim out of there. That was a big one. And now they put it back in.
Chapter of the guy taken up that's made perfect. It's
the Book of Enoch. Yeah, the book of Enoch.
Yes. Yeah, that whole chapter being missing, when clearly that was like, there's stuff leading up to it before and then stuff petering out after. Clearly that was important.
Out of every book in the Bible, now don't get me wrong, I know the Bible's in spiritual speak. I'm very aware of that. And I know there are representations of actual historical accounts in the Bible, but I feel the Book of Enoch was very well potentially a historical account of something that potentially went down back then. I mean, you just look at it, because one of the biggest things I've seen, at least in my research, even if we're going through the consensual narrative of things, you can explain like certain metaphors away, like, let's even just take like ancient Greek philosophy for a second. Like Zeus was angry, so he casted a storm upon all of Greece, right? So like, of course we know Zeus is an energy and things like that, but even going with the consensual narrative, I'm just using this for the comparison I'm getting to, like you could see that as an act of nature. But then you have instances where Thoth walked into the temple and gave all of the Egyptian priests knowledge. You can't exactly explain that away. You know what I mean? And you can't say there was a metaphor that something swooped in and delivered knowledge that was of nature, of a natural occurrence. It verbatim says. And then when you look at the Book of Enoch, and you see a lot of what went down, angels taking human women as wives, being lecherous individuals, to say the least. And, Enoch being brought into heaven alive, things like that. I mean, we gravitate beyond the scope of metaphor there, at least in my eyes, and we're diving into something that quite literally could have happened. Real quick, I want to read a couple of comments from Lion. David, thank you for being here. An old friend of mine used to say his dad taught him, the bigger the crowd, the lower the average IQ. This is alone a reason to shun organized religion as we know it. David, you hit the point home on that. His next comment's too much. But he said, hold on, let me pull it up for everybody, because I think it's just hilarious. Hey, angels can get married. Okay. I'm with you, man. I'm with you. And then we have Don, who never wrote a book about Jesus. I believe that he is a knowledge energy of moral value and thought that we were meant to receive. Don, absolutely. You are on the right track.
Buddha didn't write anything either. That's a very good point. Like, very good point.
Oh, absolutely, man. Don's on the wavelength too, for sure.
Yeah, you're tapped in. Yeah.
But nonetheless, so what's very interesting about metaphysical Christianity is like I was telling you, we're not the first people who tried this. We are not the first people who tried to bring this back into this existence, kind of cultivate true Christ. And during my research for this episode, I actually found a Christian sect that I had never heard of. And I kind of want to bring it up here today. Yeah, because it's exactly what we're doing. And it's like, it's crazy that we can see throughout time, in history, that many people have tried to bring back true Christ, and they have. And what had stopped them or what had gotten in the way, I'm not sure. It could have been the modern church at the time. But let's take a look at Swedenborgianism. And I know it's a mouthful. Trust me, it's a definite mouthful. But this is actually very interesting. And I was looking at this, and I was like, "Holy crap, dude! I can't believe that there have been other people before us to try this." So I was actually quite happy to know that we were not alone in our pursuit. There have been others before us who have tried, and maybe we're meant to seal the deal this time. That's what it seems like to me. We are meant to seal the deal. So we have the new church, or Swedenborgianism, can refer to any of several historically related Christian denominations that developed under the influence of the theology of Emanuel Swedenborg. And the Swedenborgian tradition is considered a part of Restorationist Christianity. So we'll dive into what Restorationist Christianity is in a little bit, but let's talk about Swedenborg's writings focus on a narrative of Christianity's historical decline due to the loss of inner sense of the scripture. And I'm just highlighting that because, a lot of us who are, on our spiritual evolution, we know the kingdom of God is within us and without us. And, we know that within a lot of the answers lie, so the fact that this sect of Christianity is focusing on the inner sense of the scripture as opposed to the exoteric understanding of faith, that is definitely what drew my attention about all of this. And I even consider doing a show on this alone after even just researching this.
Yeah, there's more than just them. Like, not to interrupt, but Martin Luther, like I mention him all the time. He's what got me to join the church, because I started reading just about Martin Luther, because F the Catholics. I read enough about them to be like, absolutely not. But I got into Martin Luther, and he was a Catholic priest and read the Bible himself and was like, yo, this is BS. He tried saying it. They tried to shut him up. They tried to kill him. Luckily, I think it was the German king at the time protected him and kept him safe. And he was able to write out and retranslate out the Bible himself for the people. And that's why it was only available in German. That Geneva Bible that we were talking about before, that came from the Martin Luther version. They translated it then again into English so they could read it. But that's stemming from Martin Luther. So he's the father of Protestantism. But his things got twisted really quickly too. He didn't want a church to be named after him. He was just trying to teach what Christ was actually trying to teach. Same as the Valentinians, same as the Gnostics themselves. Like, there's a lot of people that say the Gnostic things were not written during Jesus. They were written like 300 to 500 years after themselves. A lot of them, like, this is what they argue about, meaning that was resurgences in themselves.
Absolutely. Don't worry about interrupting. Chime in whenever you want. Like, yeah, no big deal on that. But no, exactly. I mean, we see this resurgence, these attempts at this resurgence of true Christ. And I mean, exactly like you said, Dyanna, I mean, it started just a mere few hundred years after the supposed death of that embodiment of Christ. Yeshua. So exactly. And I mean, and that's why this whole concept of, this new church, like completely enamored me a little bit, because it was like, wow, we see this succession throughout history of people trying to bring this back. They're trying to bring back true Christ.
Yeah. Even David's church, Saint Germain. I've read the material, and it's pretty spot on. Like, it's coming from the true Christ heart of things, and they take it a step further in like a channeled way. But honestly, like, I vibe with it.
Absolutely, man. And freaking, we have Karen chiming in. I love Martin Luther, such a wonderful teacher. Great to see you here, Karen. Kyle, thanks for being here, man. Martin Luther really introduced the concept of individualism to Christianity. He was a real G. I definitely agree with that. And then we have a great teacher emerges with some spiritual truth that changes the world. Absolutely, David. But one of the biggest things I like about Swedenborgianism now, of course, you wouldn't go ahead and call me a Swedenborgianist, but like, we resonate with this, both you and I. And I know a lot of people here resonate with this. And the best thing about this that I found, so check this out, it follows that Christianity in its present condition, as described by Swedenborg, fails to facilitate man's regeneration, contributing to a perceived descent of mankind into ignorance and sin. Swedenborg held that a spiritual second coming of Christ had begun, marking the start of the new church and offering a new path to regeneration. So I know that resonates with you, Dyanna, like, especially, it just hits the point home so hard. And it's like, I'm kind of like, how
the
did I not know?
resurrection. Come alive in the name of Jesus. I'm saying it all the time because that's what that energy does. It brings your soul back online. So many of us get our souls buried in this world. It's Satan's world, literally. The demiurge. It's made to be material, and you can call that beautiful in its own way. But a lot of us hate it, and we want out, and we want to be more angels in the flesh. And that Christ energy can circumvent so much shadow work and so much, because you could do it like the Kundalini way and like try really hard and do all the work. And sure, that's great. That's going to work too. So this is why there's no dogma in Christ. But if you want the cheat code, if you want the easy way, to Christ. And I still do all of it. But what's always there, because I'm like, I want to know it all, absolutely everything, because I want to find the answer. And I know there is one, and I'm going to find it. But
absolutely,
along the way, no matter what, if you fall, if you get lost, if you're not sure what to do, if you're in a bad mood, whatever it is, that Christ energy is always there, waiting, unchanged, always forever, just as golden and bright to grab onto. And it's like, you still want to develop your own personality. You don't want to get lost in that, but it's always there.
Absolutely. And this is why I'm just insanely happy about what we're doing. And I think that we are going to make this correct this time around. Like, I think that potentially a lot of the reasons this got snuffed out, earlier on, was potentially due to the modern church. But like, now we're in, and when I say a new age, I'm not talking about the new age movement, but most certainly we are in a new age right now. And through this new age, we have new ways to connect with the divine emerging. But what we are seeing here almost is like a resurgence of something that has been. It's almost like we have done the work here. We have increased the frequency of this planet almost to allow this to burst forth in the way that it's meant to. And that's what has me really excited about this. And I mean, yes, like you were saying with the Kundalini, you can go that way. And I actually want to touch base on what you said about go with what earlier in the show, when you were talking about going with what your genetics have in store, because I also have that in me as well. So I have been called to this in the same way as you have. It's been a prominent figure in my life. Always. And I even remember telling the story where, even before I really had my awakening, like my true awakening back in 2008, I was having like what you would call like a dark night of the soul a little bit, because I had just gotten out of this really messed up place in my life. And I remember I was sitting in a town square in Gainesville, Florida. And somebody came up and handed me a photo of Jesus. And he came up to me and he was like, I really think you could use this right now. And I looked at it, and in that moment, I realized that it meant something. Like, and I was like, okay, so like, you're back, you're here, we're having this conversation again. And then it was shortly after that I was catapulted into my spiritual evolution. So could you say Christ had a hand in that? I absolutely would agree. I think he did. And it seems to be that he's been a prominent figure in a lot of our lives, because we look at a lot of people who have gone down the esoteric road, who have gone through the middle path. A lot of them were originally Christians, and they were looking for something more. They were looking for like an expansion. So So I'm absolutely excited we're having this conversation tonight. But nonetheless, let's hop into Christian Science real quick, because this is actually another what I would say metaphysical Christian sect as well, and they're actually very well known. Like, they have institutes of Christian Science. There's actually down the street from my house. I need to go check it out. Just a few blocks up, there is a school of Christian Science. So, and Christian Science is very interesting. For those of you who've not heard it, we're going to dive into it really quickly here. But yeah, no, this is it already shows that people are on it. So
yeah, I joke. I actually often, even though I've never actually researched that religion, I don't know why, maybe because I'll end up there, but I know, thanks to my old Grey's Anatomy days, that they don't allow you to get surgery. Like, you're not allowed getting medical intervention. And I'm very of that as well. And that goes into what you were saying earlier with our DNA. Our DNA is a sacred data holder of our streams from everything. It's vitally important for us.
absolutely.
It's like the code that runs the computer. So the fact that they had that in their thing, I like instantly already like, yeah, because you should not mess with yourselves, let alone and think about the enormous amount of culture that's getting you to mess with yourself on purpose, like just to look better and things like that. Like, that's because they want you to mess with your DNA.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, and Christian Science, they actually use metaphysical methods for healing as well, and to not be sick. So we have Christian Science is a Christian denomination founded in 1879 by Mary Baker Eddy, which teaches that God's love and goodness are ever present, and that understanding this truth can lead to healing and transformation. It emphasizes spiritual understanding and healing, viewing the material world as an illusion and disease and illness as mental errors. So kind of just touching on what you were saying there, Dyanna, and we believe this, in the esoteric community too, that illness and disease are energetic things. Okay, like, they are energetic things that can affect us, and it comes from a unbalance of energy. So to see this, come from Christian Science, and that just goes into what you were saying. They don't want you to have medical intervention because, we look at I've done a few shows on the current modern healthcare system as of late, and how we can't really trust it, messing with our DNA, like Dyanna said. But it's, the fact that they have their own healing method, and that they see this in this spiritual light. I mean, it's really big. And of course, we all agree with this. God is love. Christian Science teaches that God is love, ever present, all powerful, all good. The real world is seen as entirely spiritual, with the material world being an illusion. And that's something we practice a lot. I mean, we know that in our spiritual evolution, we know that the spiritual realm is of permanence, and the human realm, this physical realm, is temporary. So, and I actually had the pleasure of meeting this book writer, Ron. He was a spiritual book writer a few years ago. And his quote was like, if the spiritual is of permanence and the physical is temporary, why wouldn't you put some effort into cultivating the spiritual side of yourself?
Yeah, 100%. And you know what's important for people to realize when you're getting into researching this? As you were talking about it, I literally was like, oh yeah, I did research that. I forgot. I've read books on that. Yeah, it just got buried in the many piles I've studied throughout the years, because I actually ended up going deep down the rabbit hole. This ended up pulling me back into ceremonial magic, because I've been in and out of magic this whole time, hopefully out forever, but we'll see. But late 1800s, early 1900s was akin to what had happened in the 60s, and then akin to what's happening now. It was a resurgence of spirituality, and they were starting to combine the mental with spirituality at that point. But then people like Freud came along, and it all got buried as hogwash, and you should be embarrassed. And they started to embarrass people like that and be like, you should be more intelligent. And lo and behold, the church ends up being basic, especially the Pentecostal, they were great too. They were part of that early 1900s, and they're under Protestant, and all of the Protestant minus Pentecostal still held some of that magic, because they're the ones that talk in tongues and believe in the Holy Spirit coming down upon you, because in the early 1900s, it was off the chart. It was combining voodoo with Christianity. That's how the Pentecostal church was formed, if you want a spoiler alert on that one. Yeah.
Very interesting. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, and it was predominantly started in LA by African Americans. It was like so, and the magic that they have is off the charts. And they infused that into like the Western style of Christianity. So like that's why that's the church I was going to when I was going, because if you're going to do a church, they're the better ones. Although honestly, all of them are like going to have that dogma that's just unavoidable. But at least they had that element. They had the Holy Spirit as a living being, similar to what I feel like the corrupt Catholics would have with Mother Mary. But the Holy Spirit was a much more pure way of coming about it. There was no dogma on the Holy Spirit, put it that way. And that time period right there was such a fantastic gold mine of resurgence, and Christian Science being one of them. Like there is a lot in that time period that you can find where, like you were talking about before, how Christianity almost had like, it was an almost revival. But like reading about the Pentecostal church, you saw how they got too into like, honestly, they went really Luciferian with it in the beginning. They were having 3-day singing events, and people would break out into like the tongues and pass out. Like there was all this kind of, you could say demonic behavior. I don't know. I wasn't there, but just the fact of how like the other Christians definitely thought it was demonic. It was definitely no holds bar. They went nuts with it. And maybe they needed that. Maybe that was necessary as the voodoo. That's a wild one, merging with the stuck up Christianity. So you can really see like a melting there that could have been great. But again, they let it fizzle out. We're not going to let it fizzle out. Like we can't let this fizzle out, because that's what keeps happening over and over and over again. I think the fact that we're bridging it with metaphysics and we have tangible proof that this is all real, especially the Hercules stream. If you watch my Twitter, I keep going on about, we're getting more and more actual factual information to the all is mind. Like these things are coming out.
Absolutely. No. And it you know, I did not know that about the Pentecostal church. I did not know it was originally mixed with voodoo. And it had that magical.
Well, wasn't mixed with voodoo. It's just the people that started it had that as their roots. That was their upbringing. Like think about back in that time, they were coming off that kind of religion out of those, because they were just like fresh to the world, and they were starting to get into Christianity. And this was one that was a pastor, a preacher, and there was one guy that started it all, but it blew up enormous.
That's really interesting. And no, we saw that resurgence of spirituality. You know, a lot of people attributed that to the Carrington event that happened. You know, I think it was, if I'm correct, 1858. It was around that time. And there's a lot of people who have equated, you know, like solar activity to uptick in like a spiritual resurgence. But it is very interesting, because after that event did happen, you know, that was when the resurgence started. You know, we saw the theosophy with Madame Blavatsky start to form at that point in time. You know, we saw that's really the time Crowley in the late 1800s, early 1900s.
Yep. All of them, the Golden Dawn, that's the Golden Dawn age, was that period.
Oh, absolutely, man. And I find that very interesting. That's something, you know, like I would definitely like to explore down the line. You know, do these solar upticks have an effect on human spirituality? That's something interesting to think about. But no, it is. And then you're right, Freud came along, and you know, we had the Industrial Revolution really kicking off at that time too. And you know, the mentality then, we can't have a whole bunch of awakened, enlightened people walking around. We can't have that, you know, because then who's going to run the machines? You know, who's going to do all.
And that time, so you know what I also read a book on, and I actually loved her, and that was Perverted. The girl who invented Planned Parenthood, and I apologize, I forget her name. I'm the worst with names. But it was a female that created it, and it was out of like her being an intelligent female. And that point I had the other day, like she had that point 100 years ago, that like the whole reason women can be equals now is because we don't have 12 children. And if we don't want children, we don't have to have them. I don't see how you wouldn't want them, or that's in your own life plan. That was just so in my life plan that like, but I get to choose how many I have because of Planned Parenthood. Like she didn't start Planned Parenthood to be like abortions for everyone. She started it to literally, because contraception was illegal and very frowned upon by the church. Oh, thank you. Yes, Margaret Sanger.
Thanks, Kyle. Appreciate it. Yeah.
Yes. And she had a very tragic story too, like where her favorite daughter died. She even says that was my favorite, and she resented her sons, and she almost wished she never had kids, and that she only had them because like, and it was really, really dark, like her story. But out of it birthed something good. Like she was handing them out to the women. She started the first clinic in like, I think it was like that gross New York area at that time, and she was helping because she realized the people in poverty, she's the whole reason we don't have as gross level of poverty anymore, because there's nothing wrong with a condom, or even if you intellectually chose to be on birth control knowing there's a risk, because there's tons of things we do and eat that's a risk. If they were just to openly admit this is carcinogenic, but here you go, like fine, like I'm fine with all of choice making decisions that are not murdering someone, but like bringing that to the people was actually spiritual, because having too many children is actually even seen as a sin against Mother Earth, because she wants our children to be nurtured. She wants us to be like, and when we were angels, you would choose to procreate. Like you don't, when you're in fifth dimensional, even as humans, allegedly, Barbara Marciniak talks about this, we can do it, not make a child. Like that's an energetic decision. But the way even when as flesh humans, but as they were at the time, and being like the ignorant and being unable to read, like, and there was just this cesspool that she fixed, and she healed. And that actually pairs, that's in that time period. And it's exactly why women were able to rise up to be intellectual matches, to be intellectual equals, so that we could actually do this together finally, with like an even way, because beforehand our hands were tied. It's like, yeah, men got to take over and they were bigger than us and blah blah blah, you could say all that, but the truth is women's hands were tied. They had little beings. People that watch my show know how much I'm bothered by just one toddler, how much he like comes, he's not a toddler, sorry, he's almost 5. I'm stuck in, he's my last one, so I called him the baby, but he's always like, you know, they mummy, and that's just one. I have 3, but he's like the one that when I do my shows and they're at school, it's like, you know what I mean? So imagine 12. How is she supposed to get anything done with 12, you know?
That's a good point. That's a good point. And you know, we see that there's a balance to be had, you know, and especially what you're talking about, you know, rising to equality for women and women having that power. You know, we've talked about the Heros Gamos, we've talked about the middle pillar, you know, and we talk about the balancing of these two energies, right? We have the divine masculine and the divine feminine, and that's ultimately what Christ stands for. You know what I mean? Christ ultimately stands for that. So Spinja says, Spinja didn't like me mentioning, and I'm with you, the Industrial Revolution. I'm not a fan of it either. Trust me, there's a lot of things about it. She originally said, don't get me freaking started on the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah, the school system's to thank for that, and the way that we're indoctrinated. I mean, most people didn't get to go to school before at all. So like you could look at it that way, except they took everybody. There was no more intellectuals at all and put everyone in a box.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But, you know, and that's why I think, honestly, I mean, you look at the attempts from modern Christianity to snuff out the feminine aspect of, you know, that balance. You know, I mean, we were talking on Sunday, you know, how there was women who were involved, Karen, that just made me Uncle Ted Nugent was right about everything. Absolutely. But no, I mean, you look at that, you see the gross efforts from, you know, modern Christianity and the original church fathers to completely swipe away and to smudge away any kind of females that were, you know, involved in the early church. I mean, we brought up the Gospel of Mary Magdalene on Sunday as well, and how she was a prominent apostle of Jesus, and she was actually very intelligent. She was very well spoken, you know, and we talked about how they would get upset when she started talking because they were intimidated by her. Like, you know, they would hear her speak. But see, ultimately, I think that was the end goal for modern Christianity, is they did not want true Christ, because they know that true Christ is liberating, true Christ is loving, true Christ is compassion, true Christ is balance. Okay. And when you look at what happened to the Christian religion after the Council of Nicaea and after these 13 plus councils, you know, got a hold of the Bible, and all of that was completely erased. So, like, I mean, for me, it almost looks like that they were intentionally trying to do this, because if we were to realize what true Christ was and the balance that lies within us that we can achieve and that works in synergy and harmony with the divine feminine, to create that middle pillar, that Hieros Gamos, and things like that, I think it was intentional. Almost, it seems like. I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are on that. Yeah. Why don't you say your thoughts on that?
1,000,000%. Because like, because females are the negative, you could assume, I know like typically it seems like males are the rebel. But no, the male that's the rebel has the long hair and rides a motorcycle and does all this wild stuff. That's actually a feminine aspect. They didn't want the female awakened and intelligent because she's actually more naturally the rebel. She's going to speak the truth. She's the nag. You can even look at it in the detriment. But what's a nag really doing? She's telling you the truth you don't want to hear. And they didn't want to hear that. They didn't want to hear all these things, the questions that women are questions and wondering and puzzling and all that situation that churches today still, they don't want to answer questions. This is what drives people out of the churches. You ask questions. I went to Bible school myself for my metaphysical degree. I went to actual Bible school, like the Church of Christ version, like just the basic Bible thumping type. And they don't want to answer the questions. They're very nice about it, but they don't want to answer the questions. They don't want to think about it themselves. And why? That's insane, because the only thing you find at the end of the day is your own sovereign discernment and the fact that the all is mind and you are God. So why were they keeping us away from this? Obviously, that's for nefarious purposes. And the fact that they kept the women stifled was not because she was small and their egos would get embarrassed. That's just how they used it against the men. That's what they programmed the men to think, because the men were just as much programmed into this as the women were. Like, everybody was held down. It was the topper of the tops that realized if women were awakened and intelligent and educated, they would see right through the BS, because that's just what the negative does. That's from the yin energy. That's just what that darkness, like whatever language you want to speak of it. It's not to say females are smarter, but that energy, so men can channel this energy too, but it'd be coming from the yin. And who's more likely to have yin than a female? And that's why we've been dealing with this whole time. And that's why you had the corrupted feminist movement in the 60s, because they still kept the feminine in a tailspin and go, oh yeah, you suck so much, go be a man. If you want to succeed, go be a man. And we're still in that world today. I bet most of the women in this audience have a full-time job, and that's okay. Love and light to you, because that's what they did with society. You have to basically choose to be poor if you want to just have like the male be the worker. And like, it's like men can be like, oh, I don't want to work, and like, I don't want to this, but it's like, if you look at the system, then let's tear it all down. You know what I mean? If nobody wants to work, I'm completely okay with that. Then let's undo that industrial revolution and rip it all down. And how's that going to look? I don't know. But if we're all intellectual, sovereign, discerning beings, we'll figure it out.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with everything you just said. And real quick, the Lion said, is the Industrial Revolution maybe just another part of the Great Reset? The timeline checks out. That is thought-provoking, my friend. That's a very thought-provoking question. I actually want to save some time at the end of the show to maybe digest that if you're down, Dyanna. But no, exactly what you're saying. And I've said it before, and I mean, I won't dive too into it again, like in full depth. But when I sat down with that Cherokee elder, and he basically said to me,
that's a good story to repeat. If you repeat any story, that's a good one, because that is so on the point.
Oh, and I absolutely loved the guy, man. He was such a great guy. So when I was teaching at a holistic center on the East Coast, we had a Cherokee elder come and do the eagle dance for us, which is actually pretty sacred that we actually got to see this, because you don't get to see the eagle dance unless you're a member of the tribe and you're there at the ceremony. So I was blessed for that. That was great. But I got the chance. We talked about creation stories. We talked about star beings. We talked about everything. But one of the things he said to me that stood out the most, and that was just the most profound, he goes, Stephen, women are of the earth, men are star beings. Okay, is basically what he said to me. He goes, women have a natural connection to the divine. It is something that comes natural to them, and is something that is of their being. And he says, men can have that too, he said, but they have to work for that. because they are of the stars. They are from the heavens. And I remember him saying that, but it makes a world of sense because, like I said, you guys are basically interdimensional portals. Like, you know what I mean? Like you basically have a portal inside of you that brings life into the earth. I mean, that's one of the most spiritual things around when you think about
So do
it.
men.
Is it not?
So do men. Just to empower the men. So do men.
True,
Think about
true.
what's your prostate doing? And it's
That's
building life that's going to equally produce. The woman's going to grow it and all that business, but the men have
good
it
point.
too. Without the one, there's not the other.
Absolutely, 100%. But I just that stood out to me because, and then even in the men's group we were talking, and this is the only thing I'm bringing up from the men's group, guys. So don't hate on me for this because it was great. But we talked about how the new role for the divine masculine is going to be providing that safe, secure, stable foundation for the divine feminine to channel spirit. So no, it is. It's going to be a cooperative effort. And we're going to be walking alongside of each other in this. It's not going to be men over women, women over men. We're finding that new synergy. We're finding that new balance after this dueling dance starts to settle down, and that's why we bring it to the table for conversation, because that is bringing Christ into the picture. Thank you, Drew. That was the only thing I really wanted to share, because I thought that was amazing, and and the fact that David, we all agreed on that too, that was pretty awesome. But and that's what it's really coming down to, is we're going to have this cooperative effort, and that in itself, I think when that balance starts to form, we're going to even have true Christ emerge even further into this reality as well. Once we achieve that, and that's why we bring this stuff to the table to talk about it, everybody, because when we acknowledge these things that need healing in our collective, such as this dueling dance of the divine masculine and feminine, we're bringing healing to the table for it. We're bringing it to light. We're giving it that energy. We have the lion. They turned her into a villain when she literally just wanted to be an equal. Exactly. But nonetheless, yes, this is Christian Science, and I want to kind of segue into the reason why a lot of modern Christians denounce metaphysics and think it's a slippery slope, or think it is of evil, or it is not of God. But really, we know it's dogma, right? We know it's dogma. We know that it comes from the dogmatic mentality that a lot of the modern churches have. And really, ultimately, it's because they want to be in control of the interpretations of the scripture. They want to be in control of your salvation.
And with the people need to wake up to this. They think and they think everybody in the Christian church is like this.
Exactly. It's not that.
The they is like 5 dudes, and everybody else is a brainwashed sheep. Because even the pastors, when you start to ask them questions, like they're just as suffering and just as sad as everybody else. And you ask them, they're like, I don't know. Oh, God said so. That's why. What face they put on, the one holier than thou, and it's like, you don't know. And then they're unwilling to, they would rather stand in as a sheep. And you'll find this with everybody, even like the bed jabbers and stuff. You'll find they'd rather stand with the deceit and with their ego than admit maybe they've been taken advantage of too. Maybe they are just as much been kept prisoner by this as everybody else. And it's like the prison, they always say, Jordan Peterson's big on saying, you would have been a guard in Auschwitz if they told you to, because that's how the situations work. Because this is why you got to die to the self. This is why the ego's got to be put under control, so that you could be like, oops, I was wrong, because that needs to happen to dig yourself out. And so everybody there is more a sheep, and this is why it's a joke. And this is why we got to actually do something, because the actual bad guys are maybe there's 100,000 of them, but still, in a planet of 8 billion, that's nothing.
Absolutely. That's nothing. That's nothing. And no, that's absolutely, you're absolutely right. That's what we need to do. And I think, it ultimately comes from you look at today's modern Christian, right? And my mom's in the audience, so obviously I don't mean you, Mom. So you're a little bit different than this, so don't take it that way. And you look at today's modern Christian, most of them are what I call bandwagon Christians. And they're only a Christian because it's what their friends are doing, or they're only a Christian
They want love.
because
They want support. They want
exactly.
community. It's very, I see it. I wanted to be there too. It just, I can't shake the not fitting, and other people can like allow that. You know what I mean? It's all about what your astrological makeup is. Like, that's just what my astrology is. So I can't even say like, I'm so smart. No, like if you read my astrology, it says I'm not going to believe anything you tell me. It says I'm going to have to learn it for myself. Like, that's just a part of my makeup. So I have complete compassion for all the other people that they just don't know, you know?
Oh, exactly. And I get that want, I get that want. But it's interesting when you see the side effect of it, because it's a good thing what you're saying. Absolutely. Like the community, the stability in Christ. The side effect of it is almost the mob mentality starts to come into play a little bit when you're looking at it from that perspective too, because I mean, you see these people, they finally have become accepted by a group, they finally have that community that they've been looking for. But when you deviate and you begin to ask questions, you start to see the community fall away from you. And so really it's a double-edged sword. It's amazing that they're trying to reach out, they're trying to find that community. And but
that
with
comes
it
down
has
to energetics. Like, if you wonder why that is, that's energetics. They feel that because you are in a unified energetic circle, right? If someone starts to pull away, you feel that, and you're like, oh, get Cindy, she's getting out of here. And like, it's all, without you even realizing it, becomes subconscious, because a lot of our dealings, a lot of our perceptions are subconscious. 95%.
Absolutely.
That's huge. And so when they feel these things and they feel those pulls, and like, that's how you get them jumping on each other. And it's awareness. This awareness is so key, because if you know that and you feel that, that's where you just let that ego part dissolve, and you'll be all right. Cindy can go and you're cool. Like, everybody can learn to allow things to come and go if they just learn how to feel into that space.
Oh, 100%, man. And it's all about, it's really understanding too that you have the power to, and because like even what Spin just said here, let me pull up what she said here. I don't need a middleman to connect me to source. I got this. Thanks. And that's exactly the point. Like, one of the biggest things that they don't explain today in modern Christianity is it was the biggest thing that I think Jesus, that embodiment of Christ, was trying to relay to us, is that you don't need a middleman to interpret the scripture. You don't need a middleman to connect with the divine. You're a facet of the divine. You are a subjective focal point, like, and that was the ultimate realization we think, we see that embodiment of Christ had. And that's ultimately where I think the deviation occurs, and people kind of look upon metaphysics, because when you look at modern Christianity itself and how it's presented, it is very exoteric. Christ is on the outside of you. The kingdom of God is on the outside of you. You're consistently giving away all of this power. And but little do they know, like a lot of these modern Christians who, do join for the right reasons. They join for the community, and, they join for that stability. Excuse me. They don't understand that they have the power to interpret this themselves. And it's almost as if they're going in blind, because they begin to see the church as a source of authority. And we both, you and I, know that the church is a place of celebration. It's a place of congregation. It's a place to discuss, and to look at these scriptures and understand and find ways to embody these teachings. But when you walk into it thinking the church is a source of authority, that's where I think.
Agreed. And it helps you build perceptions, because the all is mind, right? We could say this, but we need to cultivate this. So building perceptions, you and me going back and forth, and we're building, going back and forth with the audience, going back and forth in the panel we do, we're building, because you're discussing, I see God as this, I see God as that. And you need to be able to discuss that to build perception. So you have to be able to step out of the narrative, or you end up, because atrophy, man, you're just going to end up smaller and shittier. And that's why the Protestant religion led to atheism. because they dried up the well, sticking in the dogma and not allow, oh, don't talk about that. That's outside the box. And they just get smaller and smaller. And how every revolution, like Martin Luther King and the ones you mentioned in the Gnostics and Valentinians and all the ones, they dry up because they're like, let's say Valentinian's dead. And they're like, oh, well, that's not how he said it. That's, oh, you're getting it wrong. Like, okay, now you guys are doing it. So Valentinian had it right. I might be saying his name wrong. He had it right to like birth it again. And just like Martin Luther King birthed it again, just like hopefully we're birthing it again. But if we're dead and gone and the children don't understand the message that it's about your sovereign discernment, it's about building your perceptions, it's about everything in metaphysics, and that's just a fact of how the universe runs, and we're still upgrading how that works. But if you start to try to quote exactly what I said, if you take my YouTube videos and make them canon one day, I'm just a dumb human that is trying to bring forth the in my own gnosis, and I'm very read. I learn tons. I'm constantly updating my information, but I am still just a human. And you should always trust your highest source. Times change, like the narratives change. So how I say something to you in one way in 100 years could read differently. Like that could be
Absolutely.
like, that's
Absolutely.
not like the old slave stuff and the sexism stuff that does not land anymore. And instead of updating it, like, yeah, you have to always be updating. Like you have to.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and you're right. You know, it's going to take you know, us really putting in this work, and you know, really trying to bring an understanding to the table of, you know, what's kind of been missing from, you know, modern Christian scripture. Because I mean, when we look at, you know, the inner sense of it all, kind of like what they were saying in Swedenborgianism, you know, the inner sense of the scripture itself. I mean, we see that there is a lot of deep truths, deeply divine messages. And I mean, it even ties into the metaphysical components of this reality as well. I mean, in all honesty, you know, kind of, you know, hitting the nail on the head here, I think metaphysics expands and opens the doors in Christianity to a not only a deeper understanding of you know, God's existence and God's part here, you know, our existence here and our part here as well, and the facets and the way that this creation happens to work and tick. You know, it's almost like to me, it's as we know, we were saying it was intentionally done, but it's almost like a you know, I'm looking for the word here. It's almost like we have to bring forth this in the best way possible. I lost the word on my tongue,
Yeah,
but
no,
that's exactly what I was saying. Yeah,
metaphysics is everything. So it shouldn't even just be in church. Church should just be like going to the gym, except mind, body, soul, right? So eat healthy,
yeah.
go to the gym, and go to church because it's cleansing of the soul, right? That's how that should be seen. Go as often as you like. The spiritual centers that hopefully we have one day are open 24/7. There's always different things going on. It's totally open and just like all these different things to heal you and blah. But it's not like a big serious thing because metaphysics, spirituality, and God should be in absolutely everything you do. Absolutely everything should be correlated to metaphysics because everything is metaphysics. Everything is energy. And the fact that science has even proven this to an enormous degree. And this is not screamed at the rooftops by every institution. If they actually loved us, the government, the school institutions, they would make sure that we knew our thoughts change reality. Don't you think that's a big deal to know? They know.
Absolutely.
So why don't we know? And that's when you bring, because you want Christ in everything because it updates the energy. You want God in everything because you are God. So why wouldn't you pull it into everything so that everything you do is made with more power? So it's metaphysics is, it literally should be laced into absolutely everything. It's not dogma. It's the literal creation of the universe. And that can grow and bend however more we continue to dive into quantum physics and to get to new levels of physics and just keep going with it. That to me is metaphysics.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, like we were talking about on Sunday as well. I mean, it really seems that quantum physics is dead set on proving a lot of these metaphysical concepts and these esoteric concepts to be true.
Pretty much most of them, all of them have been proven.
It's insane. Real quick, I want to give a shout out because I think this is her first time here, but you guys remember from X, Anolind, Anandalind, or however your X name is. I'm not going to say your real name because, but thanks for being here. It's awesome. It's awesome to see you here. And yeah, but also as well, we have Don Rogers, Chris Matthew quote, "I don't believe anything. I have a current understanding."
Yes. Sorry. Very agree.
That's really cool. We have Karen. Any thoughts around A Course in Miracles and how it ties in with Christian Scientists? Let's let Dyanna answer that. Yeah.
Because when I was doing my ministry all by myself and I knew I needed direction. So it's funny we're doing this together. I knew I needed that because my mouth can just go. And I'll still end up talking about God and you'll still end up learning stuff, but you might be like, what was the point? So I went through A Course in Miracles because for me, it was the best thing that got me over my ego. So it's not even necessarily the best spiritual teacher. It's the best eviscerator of ego. And you go through it day by day by day. And it takes you little step by little step. And you realize it's dismantling the subconscious in your own perceptions because the all is mind. And it's getting you to be able to break the chains of subconscious programmings from every single avenue. It's meticulously done and comes from an extremely high source. So I would absolutely believe it's Jesus, but I'm open to it not being Jesus. There's lots of good materials that come from lots of different great beings, but it's really an eviscerator of the ego. But to properly connect to the all is mind and the God source above and Christ energy, you want to fix that ego. I'm not one to say ego death, but you have to change it out of its current programming and open it up to be able to be programmed again and again and again and again, because you can get your ego on board with being constantly reprogrammed and it can even be excited about it.
So Spinger wants to know who wrote A Course in Miracles. I've heard this mentioned a lot, and we would like to look into it. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll look it up. It's a female psychologist, and she worked with a buddy. That was a guy and a girl team, and she worked with him, and they would put it together themselves and kind of edit it because she would just start writing it herself, and then later he began helping, and then they just did it together. And it's funny, Ra is the guy girl team, Seth is a guy girl team. It's always been this like over and over and over again, and they were just co-worker buddies in the Course in Miracles, and they brought through. I love Seth and I love the raw material too, but the best thing for getting rid of the ego, which is so important, was A Course in Miracles.
And absolutely. And one of the things I want to clear too, and I know I've talked about this on the show quite a bit. And I honestly, what to do with the ego? So like, especially when we're trying to bring Christ into the picture and we're trying to do our healing, I love the Shiva analogy. It's just something I've always.
Helen Schuckman. Sorry, keep going though. Helen Schuckman.
No. Helen Schuckman. Okay, cool. But no, it's like, I love the Shiva analogy for it too. Shiva wore the serpent around his neck as an ornament. And, and the serpent would be, referring to the ego. And that is exactly what we want to do with our egos. You know what I mean? It's not the complete killing of the ego, because if we had no ego, I would be laying on this floor behind me, one with everything at all times, not doing any of the work that I'm supposed to be doing here. So like, we hear so much, and I just want to clear up that misconception. It's not killing the ego. I'd say it's taming it. It's softening it. As Dyanna says,
it's your assistant. You don't want it to be the boss, but you need that assistant.
Well, you called it wrangling the bull. And I think that's also another great way to put it. It is. It's you want it in the passenger seat of your vehicle. You know what I mean? You have your higher self driving. That's what you want. And you don't want the ego reaching over and taking the wheel and just slamming it and just crashing you back into like old habits. And exactly, Karen, make the ego my servant. Exactly, that is 100% what it is. And I'm even going to look into A Course in Miracles myself. I've heard
that term in the Bible, servant of God. You are but a servant of God. You are but a servant of God. Maybe they're saying you're only your ego, and that's a servant of God. So that just came to me.
No, exactly. But nonetheless, I think, because I do want to hop into human design a little bit, because I know there are some people I know, and Nandalind is very interested in, learning about her chart too. But let's just sum this up really quick as well. Christianity and metaphysics work together. All right. And there's no doubt about it. We went through the definition of metaphysics. I'm even going to bring it up one more time just so everybody can take a look at it, because it really solidifies, that Christianity and metaphysics do work together, because, here we go again. We have the branch of philosophy that deals with the first principles of things, including abstract concepts such as being, knowing, substance, cause, identity, time, and space. And for all of you who are well versed in the Bible, the Bible is an entire book on being, knowing, substance, cause, identity, time, and space. It is quite literally a whole book on it. So the biggest thing I can say to everybody is drop the dogma. Okay. Expand your horizons.
Everywhere.
And absolutely. And understand that Jesus was telling you that you yourself had the power to do this. You yourself had the power to interpret the word of God. And your only authority as a Christian should be the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And even though in Swedenborgianism, that they're all one too. So we know that the divine consciousness, the divine itself, is your only authority. And Dyanna, what are your closing thoughts on it?
Just to check out the True Church of Christ. We're starting to build it up, but we're going to stream it on our channel. But because this is going to keep going. This is building. This is because, as you can see, like, it's a living process of watching things come together and watching streams interact for us to build this bigger, for something tangible, for us to move forward in the future with. So we know the answers. We know what to do about the future. We are the ones teasing this out. And likewise, also the creator beings, the all is mind power collectively coming together, because the matrices are real. Like, matrices can be organic, or they could trick you into making them, but they're always organic. But they know how to diddle with it, So we can also do the same, but ours done in the truest of highest lights, which is Christ. So you can honestly believe whatever you want, but I like more bang for my buck, in my shopping and my spirituality, because this is how you do the work with the most payoff. It gives you the biggest edge above the enemy, as they like to say. Whatever nemesis you have, and there's many we're all dealing with, this Christ energy, middle pillar life, if you're in the Kabbalah, that middle pillar is all going to lead you to the highest place. Awaken the God spark within. Like, you can, when you're actually meditating, feel it come online. It's like a warm, growing ember inside, and you want to be able, I can tap into that anytime I want. So anytime that wasn't born with, that was meditating and growing that muscle. So work into that, continue to tune into us, because we're going to keep doing this. Like, we're going to keep growing the understanding of how to have a tangible spiritual life and to create the new world. And you will, along with us, help create that, because that's how neural networks make matrices in the all is mind power.
Absolutely. And you hit the point home hard. Yes, go please follow Church of True Christ. And yes, please join us. No, of course, because we're going to keep pushing and we're going to keep going. And we really want to bring True Christ back in the picture, because we know that True Christ is love. We know that True Christ is acceptance. We know that True Christ is an embodiment of balance. We know that True Christ is the light that is permeating through the darkness in this world at this point in time. So yes, please join us on our journey. It's going to be a good one, and we want to bring nothing but good things to the table, and we want to do Christ justice. And of course, like I've said a couple times on the show before, I'm named after Saint Stephen, who Paul stoned to death. So this is kind of like my I have to do this, because Paul's going down. I know David has his opinions on Paul, but Paul stoned my namesake to death. Okay, so I have a right, all right, to feel the way I do about Paul. But nonetheless, let's kind of dive into human design a little bit. And so I'm going to because you're a little bit more well-versed than me, and this is going to be a little bit of a learning experience for me as well. But I have to say, I've become very profoundly interested in human design and how very stunningly accurate it is when it comes to kind of depicting our not only our personalities, our struggles we're going to have here, our strengths, as well as these certain aspects of ourselves, such as a manifestor, projector, generator, and didn't you say there was one more? There was reflector, correct?
Yeah, reflector, 1%. 1%. I have never knowingly met one. I might have accidentally, but I've never knowingly met one.
We were talking about how we didn't know any in the group chat. We were talking about how we didn't know any female manifestors, and then one of my friends just happened to know a few, and I was like, "Holy crap!" I was like, and she said only one of them is awakened, and the rest are just grumpy and pissed off. And like me being a manifester, and you're not awakened, I can understand exactly why they're grumpy and pissed off, because they're not tapping into their true power. They might be confused about it, but Dyanna, if you don't mind, let's give a little bit of a rundown of human design. And, we can bring up the charts if you want. It's totally fine, whatever you want to do. But let's kind of break down what it all is and like how we can digest these charts as well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I have to bring up the charts because otherwise you're just going to hear me saying words and it doesn't mean anything. And that's one of the reasons why human design is kind of lean towards it. It's all good, and it is using your astrology. So if you I should start there. If you've never ever heard of it, it is using your astrology, but it's using it in a different way. So it took a whole bunch of things, including Kabbalah, the I Ching, and it filters it through this like mandala that mathematically with your astrology. So it's taking the same astrology, time and birth and all that, and putting it through just like a different math system. And it even will use the planets, and it's all in a math way, and it comes out into this mandala, and then the mandala feeds into the graph. I'll pull up for you Stephen's first. I have both of ours ready so that you can see the difference. So the types, Stephen went over them. I'm a projector. Sarah the alchemist is a projector, if you know them. Stephen's a manifestor, only 8 to 9% of the population. I'm about 20 to 22% of the population. And then the majority of the population are generators. And within that are manifesting generators. And they're like a slight variation, but they are still technically called generators. So they really only say there's actually 4 types, because a manifesting generator is basically just a generator with ADD. And they're never going to finish their projects, but they're going to have that same amount of energy. And they're gonna have that because generators have unlimited energy, and this is why they're the majority of the workforce. They're more easily made sheeple, but they can wake up. Our beloved Samantha is a generator, and she shooketh me because I didn't believe it. I was like, "You must be a projector because we're naturally spiritual." Projectors take down information from the cosmos. Even Sarah just said, "I know Dawn was there. I was there too." Oh, actually, I watched late, so I wasn't there live. But she just said that she has to do this. She's like, "I have to. I'm a projector," or something like that. And I'm like, "Yeah, we have to." I don't know how projectors live a different life, really, because we're tapped directly into the cosmos. We only came around in the mid 1700s. Before that, the humans were only 7 centered. So there was only 7 energy centers. And this is actually different, some say, to the chakras, but that's an arguable point I won't bother getting into. You can think your own thoughts. Because we were only 7 centers, and manifestors already existed. Manifestors were the evil dictators back then. Mwahaha. But and they ruled over the generators. Generators are programmed to listen. They're programmed to obey. So if you find yourself struggling with beliefs and it turns out you're a generator, that's not your fault. And just like go at that, knowing you're a generator, knowing you might need to work a little harder, and just knowing like let that I want to be a sheep thing, however that feels for you. Not that you want to be a sheep, but like you want to I want to listen to what they said. I want to obey. They're the boss. They're So like know that that's programmed and a part of your actual like astrological genetic makeup, you could really call it. So where was I with that though? Manifestors. Oh, Matthias Stefano is a manifestor, and I love him. And funny, if Sarah and him got together like to do something spiritual, the world would be saved tomorrow. Because like, wow. The manifestor has the energy. They limited energy. They can run out. They can burn out, but they have way more energy. A projector has no energy. We are given all this cosmic divine information, but we're not able to take anything over because we need to be invited. So we can't go into any endeavor without being invited, or we suffer the consequences. And then invites could be like, you could kind of make up, like you learn tips and tricks to find an invite, right? Because everything in your life, this isn't just professional, it's absolutely everything in your life. You need an invite, and you have absolutely no energy of your own. You need to get praise and be thanked to get energy. That's a wonderful yeah. And then Sarah even talks about it. Like, she's like, that's why she loves doing her lives now. She's like, I need this. It's like me doing my YouTube show. I need to be giving. That's why we're called projectors. We have to project out the messages. It's why we were put here. And then the human became 9-centered because the energy required for a projector needed more energy. But then everybody got upgraded. So they made sure the projectors know better than anybody else. They needed to be here to bring down the cosmic information. And you can watch humanity skyrocket after that time. But they made sure everybody was upgraded, so it's all even as well, because the divine is very, very, very on everything being even. Okay, share screen.
And I'm glad. Yeah. I'll bring it up as soon as you put it up. But I'm glad I got rid of a lot of the darkness in me, because I'm not going to be an evil dictator. Screw that. my inner anarchist just cringes about thinking about that. So it's like no.
Yes, yeah, no, and it's very lucky. And my son's a manifester too, and I it's funny because I had plans of working with a manifester, and then lo and behold, here we are. I thought I was gonna have to wait 20 years for him to get old enough.
You know what's funny? A lot of the people who have known me for a while are going to see the not self theme anger, and they're going to be like, "Oh."
Well, that's the thing, though. In projectors, it's bitterness, and most projectors you'll find are bitter, because what that means is you're not living your truest self. So when that comes up, so for me, it's bitterness. For you, it's anger. For generators, it's like not satisfied. Generators theme, like generators, if you ever want to be sad because you get brainwashed easier, your lot in life is to be satisfied. Your lot in life is to experience pleasure. Your lot in life is to be happy. We don't get that luxury, manifestors and projectors. Manifestors and projectors are put here to work. And if they don't do it, they're going to suffer in misery. His is anger, mine is bitterness. Although actually I'm very fire in astrology, so I have tons of anger too. Okay, so we're looking at Stephen's chart. And just so you know, like, we're going to go over it. The colored ones are defined centers. So they're going to have more of a meaning for you as you. Where open centers are where you're going to be more vulnerable for things to come in, but that can be a good thing. I have an open throat, and that used to be a bad thing. But when you do things in sovereign discernment, empowered, now my open throat is a way to perceive all perceptions. Samantha has it too. All perceptions, and spit back out a new, like, I can take in and amalgamate theories. So and only 20% of the entire population has it. It doesn't matter what type you are. Anyone can have an open throat. Stephen has a defined throat, but that means he's going to know his truth. That means when he talks, he knows what he means. So it actually is very good. Technically, it's kind of a very bother to have an open throat, but I've just learned how to use it for good. His is defined, and he has a defined sense of self. I'm pointing like you can see it. Can you guys see my mouse? Can you see my mouse?
Yeah. We can see it. I can see you moving around.
I'm pointing with my finger too. But okay, so this yellow, in case you can't see it, is the sense of self, the sense of identity. And most people end up having that open, but him and I both have that closed. So we know who we are. I might not know how to describe it. He does, because he's got the defined throat. You see how this is working? But his mind in his ajna are open. That means people can send him thoughts, but he's a manifester, so he's probably going to shoot that off. I also am I'm extremely open. I'm really close to being a reflector. I'm extremely open, which means I take in everything. And you can even link this into being an empath. His emotions are defined, though, and he is a defined authority. Now, your authority type is the next, besides your energy type, which is the projector manifester, the next most important thing you want to be thinking about is your authority type, because that's how you make decisions. So for me, if you can see my mouse, I'm down here in the spleen. I'm splenic. And that means I get an instant hit, a whisper of like, go left, go right, eat that, don't eat that. Like, it's barely any instructions whatsoever. It's very frustrating. And if I don't listen, it's gone like that, just gone. So I have to listen. Stephen actually has to think about things. He's got to feel it out. He's got to just like, oh, it sucks, or oh, that's great, and just like really give it the time it needs. It's not too, like, there's outer authorities, and they're supposed to wait a whole month and talk to people. So that's, I couldn't imagine. I don't have the patience for that. So my splenic is good. There's also sacral. Sacral are also intuitive. They're also intuitive, but they get more information. They get like a lot more information involved in their intuition. They can actually explain why they intuitively got that. So it's much nicer.
That's actually 100% correct. It's eerie, but it's true. It's true.
Yeah, human design really is. I find astrology is like, it's just as true. It's just this is more concentrated and more true. And then we have our gene keys, which is built off this, made by a different guy that I'm going to get into next. I've learned, but I'm not like, I couldn't teach you about it yet. But I love it. And it was so spot on too. And I think of astrology for your overall personality. Your human design is how you should live life. But then your gene keys is your destiny and maybe your future. They all play together very well. Okay. Oh, so emotional needs to make emotional decisions. This right here is his heart. So he has a defined heart, which could also be rare, and that's a strong thing. I have that too. I'm defined heart, defined self, and defined splenic, and that's all I have defined. Everything else in me is open. So I'm open emotions, empath there, open throat, and then more or less even. And then there's definition. So this is to do with all those colored in sections we see. There's a split in Stevens. He's split. So he does better in a partnership, and that's with everything in life. So he's going to excel better with a partner. There's triple split, and then they want more people, and there's quadruple split, and they want a huge crowd all the time. Or there's singular definition, me. And that means I'm good on my own. I succeed I can do whatever I want. I don't need permission. I don't need to be, but then I'm also a projector. So I kind of do. So like they found a way to make it anyways. But in my definition, I'm good. Like I'm a single split. So, and then you're going to be one of the four: single, double, triple, quadruple. And neither's more ideal than any of these are not like one. They made sure it was all even. So even if one sounds awesome, you're like, oh, I wish I was that. There's going to be like generators, especially because I always sound like I'm pooing on them because they do end up being the majority of the sheeple. They're 70 to 72% of the population. And most of the sheeple are generators. But they also have a ridiculously good side of happiness and pleasure and just like enjoyability, being able to relax, like being able to just sit there and go, oh, life is good. Like, so if you're a generator and that hasn't happened for you, know that it's possible. Where a manifestor and a projectors are very, very likely to have addiction issues. If you're a projector, being addicted to a substance is highly likely because of the absolutely no energy. I used to be addicted to Red Bull, like very addicted to Red Bull. I just got off that like last year because I found out the B12 used in it is used from human fecal matter. Gross. If you still drink Red Bull.
Yeah, the cyanocolpin. Yeah. That's how your version of B12. Yeah,
that's the one. And so that made me stop finally. All the other horrible things I learned wasn't enough because I loved it that much. But yeah, go ahead.
I still have a caffeine problem. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I know.
That's the one thing I want to quit one day. Right now, it's just not feasible. It's just because of everything going on.
I got off, but this is mud. I use mud water and matcha. I add in my own matcha because they don't make it with enough. Because energy is not a joke, and because you don't have unlimited energy either. You just have a lot. You do you make your own, but your meter can if you give it too much gas, you can burn out just like a projector, but you make your own, so you're gonna refill the tank. You just make sure to sit back and relax, and you're gonna rebuild your own energy.
That's 100% true.
Yeah, where a projector could lay dead on the floor for a month until someone came in and said, "I'm grateful for you."
No, it's stunning. It's stunningly accurate, man. It really is. It's uncanny. It's very interesting. So, one of the things I wanted to ask you about is the significance of the incarnation cross, because I know that is always. Yep. Yeah. Let's hear what you got to say about that.
Okay, well, you have a great one, and yours is, I have that up too. So let me see, how do I do this? So if I nope, that didn't change it. Okay, so I'm going to stop and then reshare. So you guys all see that page. Because I already thought of that and I pulled it up, and this is just one person's take on it because just so you had a way to look at it, that's not on my phone. The official app I use is just a phone app. It's called Stella. It's actually only like 40 something a year, which is way cheaper than everywhere. Like the major one that I was just using, the free chart there, because it gives you better. It's like $69 a month. Like,
yeah. I've seen that one before. It's interesting and why they try to charge so much. But
yeah, it's good and it is better, but not that much better. Like I pay 40 a year versus 69 a month. So yeah. So this is his incarnation cross. So his incarnation cross, so I guess I should have showed you before I switched. Oh, well, it's the top numbers that you saw there. There's two different sides. There's the personality and there's the subconscious, and all your different channels, which that can get really, really intricate and can be its own lesson. So I won't go over it too much, but it's taking your top two ones. It's taking that's why it's a cross, right? Your incarnation cross. It's taking your top personality ones and your top subconscious ones. And your subconscious ones are the ones taking 88 days before you're even born. Because when you're doing human astrology, that's why I think human design goes so much deeper, because it's also pulling up the astrology 88 days before you're born. And it puts the two together and makes this incredibly intricate system. So your incarnation cross is the top two numbers on each side. So and that's a very powerful thing, but very detailed. So we'll leave that for another day. So I have the incarnation cross of Eden, which means I'm supposed to birth the next generation of magic people. But Ross said that wasn't going to happen until 2027, and I'm done having children. So I guess I don't know what that means. We'll see if they're raised.
It still probably happened. You don't know. You very well could have done that. You don't know yet.
They're definitely magical anyways. So they're very magical. Yeah. And I got a projector, a manifester, and a generator.
you got all three minus the reflector. So
yeah, exactly. That's the only one I don't know yet. Okay, so that's my cross. I'm the Eden. I'm just meant to be kind of like a Mother Mary. And there's other cool things in there too. But Stephen's is actually really awesome. And it lines up with a lot with his manifestor energy here. So this is like going to break down your personality even more. Like your projectorness and your that energy type breaks down your personality. The way your authority is will teach you how to live your life. And your incarnation cross is going to give you your mission for life. It's your mission. So Stephen's lines right up with being a manifestor, because you can read for yourself here if you want. But these lovely souls are here to support humanity as a whole and carry a trans-personal destiny. We're the guides, healers, because she's one, teachers, the ones offering wisdom and compassion to the collective. Think of us as your Mr. Miyagi, teaching you the magic behind the wax on, wax off of life.
I love that.
Love that. And then I've read a much more dry version before, where it's just, see, and then it breaks it down. The creative, the raw initiate energy of new beginnings, the bold ideas, the quiet initiative wisdom that guides us from within. So like you could see how this is exactly how Stephen has found himself. Exactly how. And I even did a deeper rundown of this, of like the careers Stephen could have. And I did it for myself too. And they were spot on. Podcaster, spiritual teacher, leader, community creator, like all these things were just like, check, check, check. That's why human design is just remarkably accurate. So if you feel lost in life, go ahead.
It's just very accurate. Just like, especially just a lot of the interpersonal aspects, like, how I formulate decisions, my own authority on the inside. It is a very emotional authority. It is. And, it's about the control too, for me, of that emotional authority. Also, I try to not, that was one big thing for me to overcome, was to have control over that emotional authority and not let it run wild. So that was a task for me here, but
my children, two of my children are emotional authorities. Oh my God. That's why I hear such loud tantrums about the tablet and the show not working or commercial being on. Like, it's what? Oh my God. Like, just the blow ups over. I can't even, like, okay. But then
you have to learn how to control that. Yeah.
Right. But I know who they are. This is why, like, I got into astrology deeply because of parenting and learning about my children. And I used to do a series on it. And I learned a lot about my children. And specifically, you could do cross just like in astrology. But again, it went deeper. It went more accurate. Was with human design. You could do it with your spouse. You could do it with your children. And it will help you. Like, why am I always arguing? Why do they always like? And you can look and you will find out why. It's honestly, it's a roadmap for life. Like, anybody that's feeling confused about life, there's answers. This is why I do this. And then it said in my astrology, I would be a human design practitioner was one of the things. Like when I broke down my career thing that I was talking about earlier, human design teacher, whatever it's called, was one of them. Practitioner.
That's a big synchronicity, because look at what you're doing right now.
Exactly. And so that was funny, because I do offer it as part of like my therapeutic process, like what I like do like when I bring people through that alchemical shadow healing, I use astrology because it's almost like it was just pragmatic, because it was a cheat sheet for me to know how to deal with them. But I hadn't, and I'll tell them about it. I'll be like, oh, that's because of this. Oh, that's because of that. But I don't like make up reports and give people. I do the reports and read them myself, and then I'll tell them stuff. But like the fact that I'm like, should I like dive in and actually just do the human design thing? And then I think about giving people reports, and
I feel that. I feel that. Don's saying he wants to get his chart done. Maybe we can do that.
I think I've told him I'll do your chart, Don. I love diving in and getting to know the different types, because it's all still learning for me too, because like I've been doing this for such like not enough time, honestly. Like there's so much you need to learn in human design. Like I'm certified in it and everything, but like I'm so thirsty for it, because it's one of those like deep modalities where like you can like know like a year's worth of information, but there's still more to learn because of the channels. And like I found out like my incarnation cross falls on an 11, and because it's like my son, I needed a 56 to be a complete and whole person. And I was like, oh my god, my husband has a 56 and so does my dad. So I was like, oh okay, cool.
Oh, yeah.
So
it's interesting how it all seems like it just, you know, and I'm not knocking on astrology, because, you know, there's very much as above, so below. You know, we talk about the movements of the heavens definitely having a energetic impact here on Earth. But this is just, it's to me, and that's what sparked my interest in it, just because of how stunningly and it's uncanny. It's how accurate it is. It's just uncanny.
Yes, no, 100%. Because I loved astrology too. I'm always saying, oh, I'm a Sagittarius. I'm not just a Sagittarius. Almost everything in my chart is Sagittarian. Like when I say, I'm not just talking my sun sign, because I get how you're made up of most of my things are Sagittarius. It's bonkers. I'm very that's like all the fire I talk about. That's all Sagittarius. I have like Lilith in Leo. Like other than that, it's all that fire is coming from Sagittarius directly. So that's like more personality. That doesn't overly help you like construct your life and make a path, do what fits best for you. Like if you don't know your energy type, especially if you're a projector, like I feel for them. I want to like one day have a projector own class or something, just like you need a support group to be like, you've lived through life, your whole life with absolutely no energy. Everyone called you lazy and stupid and useless, but you just didn't know how to use your energy. Because now that I know I'm a projector, it honestly saved my life, because I was spiritually guessing for it was Sarah that got me into it. Shocker. Sarah talked about the projectingness. This was years ago when she was pretty brand new. And I was just like, what the fuck? I knew as soon as she said it, I looked it up and I'm like, yeah, I knew I was a projector. And almost every member of my family was a projector. Like my parents, all but one sibling, and she's my mean sister.
Well, that's so interesting too. Like, you know, and to finally gain that understanding, you know, especially when, you know, you could be dealing with something like that, you know, your whole life and be confused as to why you're experiencing, and you're going to start a class for projectors. I got to start a class for manifestors.
Because you guys have it too, because you guys have like a repelling energy. It's the way your magnetism works. It whooshes in and out. Like, so you can end up, they will want to listen to you, but then they also get mad at you, and that you could get like bullied and people don't like you, but they'll listen to you. So it's really weird.
Well, that's the story of my life, man. People have either really loved me or they really didn't. So I mean, that's I mean, it lines up, and I mean, it's definitely true, you know. And but yeah, no, I definitely want to start a class for the manifestors who don't realize just yet, because I hear a lot of them are very grumpy. And it's like, and the reason why they're grumpy is because you're not tapped into that, to what you are.
Because they're supposed to be a leader. They will be happy in nothing else other than leadership. And that can be in many different fields, and there's different ways that can look, but you have to be a leader.
And no, exactly, man. Well, thank you for giving us that rundown. I appreciate you doing that. And yeah, no, I hope it answered questions, because I know Anandalind wanted to learn how to read her chart. I hope that helped you. I hope that gave you some insight. And you know, nonetheless, you know, I think we're at a really good point to wrap this up. And I just want to say that I think we covered a lot of bases today. You know, we showcased how Christianity can evolve, you know, or it can come back, you know, this resurrectionist Christianity, you know, we can bring it back to true Christ. And really, ultimately, what we need to do is we need to understand how metaphysics actually is synergistic with Christianity. It can expand upon our basis of not only just our knowledge of ourselves and our being, because we talked about knowing and identity and being in the aspects of metaphysics, and that's very available to us in the Bible, as well as, a greater, deeper understanding of the creation that we're existing in, understanding of maybe gaining an understanding a little bit, and when I say understanding, I'm even being, very forthcoming with that, of how it kind of works here, the energetic aspects of this world, how our thoughts do create reality, how, we, the kingdom of God is within us, we have this power. So that's one thing I think we really hit home hard tonight was, yes, absolutely. Metaphysics is not a slippery slope for Christians. It's not of the devil. It's going to bring Christ deeper into your life.
You can slip. Like,
you can, yeah.
Don't go down witchcraft. Don't bother with the Golden Dawn. I went there, but when it comes to the Tree of Life, learn it, but don't let it be dogmatic. Don't fall into Kabbalistics like it's a religion. So you actually can fall and get stuck in metaphysics. Like Aleister Crowley, if you find yourself getting called there, run. Go back to Christ, because there is areas that I went down myself, and I never wanted to be evil. I always wanted to be good, but I really wanted to do magic. But that is a slippery slope. That is. And you're diddling with things that you're better off just to sovereignly align and manifest.
Good point. I stand correct.
In that empowered way. Yeah.
I stand corrected. No, I know. Well, it's funny, real quick before I finish on. Yeah, I remember, I've spoken with everybody in the group chat, about how I did have my dabbling in ceremonial magic, and I did pick up a copy of the Goetia. And after reading it, I was like, my higher self's giving me a cosmic nope on
that was Aleister Crowley and the Book of Lies. That's when I went too far. I was reading Aleister Crowley's Book of Lies, I think it's called, and I was like, I've gone too far.
Dude, when they're trying to get you to line up an obsidian mirror or summon demons. Yeah, you've definitely you've definitely gone too far. But okay, I stand corrected. It can be slippery, but when you have Christ as that stability, that helps anchor you, and in that stability and in that love and in that acceptance and in that discernment, which will allow you to expand better with metaphysics. Absolutely. And human design. Thank you so much for the crash course on it. Like, now I know a little bit more, and I look forward to kind of like deepening my knowledge on it. And who knows, maybe I might run charts for people someday.
Yeah, we'll have to see. It's a growing market that, like, it's only started in the late 90s, early 2000s. And so it hasn't picked up much steam. We hear about it a lot, but like, we're going to have a population coming into it and that are going to want to know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, other than that, thank you so much, Dyanna, for joining us tonight. Like, much appreciated. It's always a good conversation we have here. And, real quick, so I do have your website, and I have your Rumble link, and I have even though you're not on there very much, and I have your YouTube link at the bottom of the description. But if there's anywhere else anybody can find you and stuff you're working on aside from Church of True Christ, why don't you let them know now?
Yeah. Well, I've got a couple books on the go now. But my website's the best place to work with me, and you have to invite me. I don't advertise. But it's therapy, and it's healing, and it's finding out the self and learning how to live sovereign, true, and discerning, figure out what's brainwashing and what's not, because that's not easy in the beginning. People take it for granted because they see these people that are like been through it, and it's like, but they don't see the years that like the process and the shadow work was happening. So yeah, and that YouTube's great. And yeah.
Absolutely. Well, guys, thank you again for joining me for another BG Cast Wednesday Live podcast. Next week, Emily Moyer will be returning, and we will be breaking down some of her new findings and her new research when it comes to highly conductive human beings and some of the very interesting blood type matches that we were talking about last time. We'll just basically be expanding upon everything we spoke about last time. And then I do have on the 21st, so the lady from the Order of Melchizedek actually got back in touch with me. So we will be having somebody on who is from the Order of Melchizedek. It's very much like a mystic Knights Templar. if we're going to be, you know, kind of trying to describe what the Order of Melchizedek is. So she will be coming on to talk about Christ as well, and, you know, the awakening of the Bible Belt and the Sophia bloodline. And yeah, we're going to have a very interesting conversation about that. But other than that, Dyanna, if you can hang out just for a quick sec. Thank you again, guys, for joining me. Go check out Dyanna. Go get a human design chart from her, subscribe and follow her channel for me. And thanks again, guys. And you remember what we say at the end now, my new saying: stay safe, stay free, but most importantly, stay sovereign. Everybody have a good night. Take care.